في أكبر الكتب.
Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lambcast. This is episode 801, and I'm your host, Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. The Movie of the Month show is always a crapshoot because people are asked to commit before the film is selected, and the process of picking a film is subject to idiosyncrasies of the Lamb community. And sometimes the shepherd falls down in the process and forgets to leave enough time. Still, we managed to get it done 99.8% of the time, and for February we have a real winner of a film from 59 years ago. Joining the show this week are some of the usual suspects, and you'll be glad that they're here. First, my Movie of the Month regular. I do want to thank the Awesome Friday podcast for offering such a powerful piece of manpower as Matthew Simpson.
It's always a pleasure to be here talking about fun, interesting movies.
Next, got no more smile than a turnip, Howard Casner of Pop Art.
They call me Mr. Casner.
Well, finally, the host to host the discussion and tell us a bit about the film. They call him Mr. Anderson from Free Kittens Movie Guide, Dave Anderson.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, the film we're talking about, in case you haven't figured it out yet, is In the Heat of the Night from 1967. It's the Academy Award-winning Best Picture, and that was the category of films offered for the February genre, Academy Award-nominated films, winning films, for Best Picture. And our vote was a narrow vote, but we did finally decide on a winner, and In the Heat of the Night is the film that we're going to be talking about. It stars Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger. It's set in the Deep South, although filmed in Illinois, and it concerns a murder investigation in a time of racial strife in a southern town. I'm going to let Dave Anderson take over the discussion, and Dave, you lead us where you will, and we'll follow your clues.
Okay. Well, this one was directed by Norman Jewison, and it was nominated for 7 Oscars and won 5 of them for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, and Best Sound. Whether or not it deserved its nominations and wins is something we can talk about later. As Richard said, it stars Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger, but it also has a supporting cast of Warren Oates and Lee Grant, Larry Gates, a very young Scott Wilson, and Anthony James, who still freaks me out. I'm going to briefly summarize the plot with, try to be spoiler free. It takes place in the small town of Sparta, Mississippi, and starts with a murder when the body of Philip Colbert is found in the street. And this is a big deal in Sparta because Colbert was a wealthy guy planning on building a factory in town, which would be a big economic boon for the town. Virgil Tibbs is immediately a suspect simply because he's a black stranger waiting at a train station. And Officer Woods, who's played by Warren Oates, hauls him to the police station without even questioning him. And that's where Tibbs meets Chief Gillespie, played by Rod Steiger. And Gillespie suspects him as well, at least until Tibbs reveals he's a Philadelphia cop, more specifically a homicide cop. Gillespie and his officers are clearly not prepared to deal with a murder investigation like this, so at Tibbs' captain's behest, he reluctantly agrees to help in this investigation. But of course, nobody wants him there, especially Gillespie. But Colbert's widow threatens to pull her husband's money and factory plans out of town if Tibbs doesn't lead the investigation. And one initial suspect is a dim-witted local named Harvey, because he was discovered with Colbert's wallet, which he claims he found on the body. And we're later led to believe that wealthy plantation owner Eric Endicott might be responsible, who would stand something to lose if a new factory was built there. In the meantime, Tibbs is continually dismissed and or threatened by a lot of the locals. And while Gillespie repeatedly tries to get Tibbs back on the train and get him out of town, he also grudgingly goes along with Tibbs' discoveries. Later in the film, a seemingly superfluous subplot is revealed that's vital to the investigation, and the narrative takes a pretty unexpected turn at that point, a plot turn that might initially be seen as a red herring. That's the nutshell plot. I think it goes without saying that in addition to being a mystery thriller, the film is also quite a bit about racial tensions in the Deep South. My personal experience with this film, I'm sad to say, I saw this one pretty late in life. So for years, it was on my list of shame. My list of shame is a list of classic films that I have to admit I haven't seen yet, but always plan on getting around to it. Anyway, I saw this one for the first time about 5 years ago when it popped up on TCM, and I felt more obligated to watch it than wanting to watch it. But I ended up loving this film and bought the Criterion disc that same week. And right now, on my list of 100 greatest movies ever made, is number 67. So take that, AFI. My first question is, what are your first experiences with this film? When did you see it? What did you think of it when you saw it? I don't think any of us saw it when it first came out, but who knows?
Well, it was close for me. I know I saw it a year or so after it opened, and I was very young. I was maybe 10 years old when I saw it, and I remember the experience because it was kind of a strange experience. My mother and my older brother and I don't know where my little brother was at the time. I don't know what my dad was doing, but we went to the movie, and it was a double feature. And I saw two Academy Award winning Best Pictures in the same screening, and both of them are longer than a 10-year-old kid should be able to tolerate. Because one of them was West Side Story, and the other was In the Heat of the Night. And I remember seeing the film and feeling like I understood some of what was going on, but a lot of it I didn't understand. The whole thing that resolves the plot at the end and explains how Virgil connects the suspect to the money and what it is he's doing in the as they refer to the darker side of town. Uh, I wasn't quite clear on that when I was 10. Now, I've seen it several times since then. And of course, I'm a more sophisticated person as I got older, and I understood a heck of a lot more what was going on and was able to follow the plot the most then. The last time I saw it in a theater, though, was I want to say 5 or 6 years ago at the TCM Film Festival. It was the opening night film, and Sidney Poitier sat in the row in front of me. So that
Oh,
was pretty
wow.
good. You know, he was quite elderly, but I think he was still a year or two away from his passing. But it was a great experience, and the theater was packed, and everybody loved the movie. So that's my personal history, and I'll give Matthew and Howard a chance to follow up.
Well, I don't think I saw it when it opened. Um, I'm sure it came to Corpus Christi, but I was very young, even though I was into film. I don't think I saw it till I got to college when I was really just seeing film after film after film. It's a very enjoyable film. It's a very interesting mystery. It is, in some ways, a very important film. I've seen it about 4 times. We covered it on Pop Art. We combined it with Rush Hour. Uh, in the Heat of the Night is considered by many to be the first or precursor to the buddy cop film. which is why I chose it when my guest chose Rush Hour. There are still some shocking scenes in it. Sometimes I find it really interesting that something that was shocking at the time, but if done today would not be shocking, is still quite shocking when you see it. And we'll probably talk about some of those later. Uh, but it's a very enjoyable murder mystery with really good acting, a very interesting supporting cast. Um, so I enjoyed it very much.
For me, I definitely saw it when I was a kid. I don't remember exactly when, but I came to it after the TV series because my grandmother liked the TV series and I would watch it with her. She was a big friend of Carol, or big fan of Carol O'Connor, who played Rod Steiger's part in the TV series. And it was actually, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's actually a very solid like police procedural from the late 80s and early to mid 90s. Um, so I definitely saw it after I saw the show, and I was probably, yeah, 10, 11, something like that when I first saw the film. And much like Richard was saying, maybe didn't fully grasp it at the time. But I've seen it several times since. I actually purchased the Criterion disc recently on the most recent sale, now that it's available on 4K. And I've watched it twice in the past like 3 months because it's an excellent film. It's a film that's it's a very satisfying murder mystery. It's a very satisfying story about these two men navigating their opinions of each other and also their opinion. And it's also one that, you know, just feels important. I don't really know how to articulate that any other way at the moment, but when you're watching it, knowing that it came out in the late 60s, um, it's a film that still feels like it was very important at the time and still feels very relevant today. Um, And yeah, I love this movie. Even though I'm Canadian, it feels like a very important movie for everyone to see.
I'm glad you brought that up. It is a movie that feels important, and there's a lot of important movies. There are the important movies that you watch because you know they're important, even if you're not necessarily enjoying it. And then there's those important movies that manage to be phenomenally entertaining as well. And this is on that short list. Um, Howard, you mentioned elements of the movie that are shocking. Uh, the one part that shocked me the most in this particular one is the slap.
Oh,
Um,
this I call it the slap heard round the world.
yeah, that's a good one. It's a for those who haven't seen the movie, it's a scene in which Endicott slaps Tibbs for questioning his whereabouts on the night of the murder, and Tibbs slaps him back, which totally shocks both Endicott and Gillespie. And it's a
Shocks the
class.
audience.
It
There's
shocked the
always a
audience.
gasp.
It shocked me when I first watched it, and I
Yeah,
watched it in my 50s. It's like I did not expect that. And apparently, it wasn't in the original script. According to
yeah, because
Sidney.
it's not in the original book. So
Right, yeah. I didn't read the book, but that's what Sidney Poitier said. It was his suggestion that Virgil slaps Endicott back, and he says that in the Criterion disc in an interview. Uh, to me, what makes that scene especially neat is it really succinctly encapsulates the racial attitudes of Sparta, and Tibbs' reaction and Endicott's expression afterwards when he's left alone to me is priceless. Um, because you can just kind of see in Endicott's face that the world is changing him around him and he's not ready for it to. And the fact that everyone else thinks it's perfectly acceptable to slap a black man uh, is probably the most shocking thing of all, especially now. Uh, but the scene really works. In fact, the first time I watched it on the Criterion disc, um, I ended up watching that scene twice. I'd skip back and watch it again. It's just such a great scene, and it just seems so spontaneous.
Well, let me mention something about shocked reactions because this is one of those things that's the time that the film came out and the time that we are in right now are vastly different eras, vastly different contexts, and the world has certainly changed a great deal. And it's interesting to me to see how differently people react to these films. I have fallen into a bad habit in the last couple of years of watching reaction videos on YouTube. And after I watched the movie yesterday, I watched one of the reactors watch the movie and how they perceived it. And this poor woman was so shocked, not by that particular instance, but by the very fact that racism existed, that people acted the way they did. And I'm glad that we don't live in that world anymore, but I was never shocked by the overt racism. That's what shocks people nowadays, apparently. The openness with which people had disdain for somebody else simply because of the color of their skin. Uh, Today, we find that incredibly offensive. But in 1967, when the movie came out, that was not atypical. And in fact, it was one of the issues that came about, you know, figuring in the budgeting of the film and where it was going to be released and whether or not it would play in certain parts of the country. And I can't imagine that the world today would be thinking about those kinds of things in the same way that they did in 1967. So I agree, it's the slap heard around the world, and it continues to be shocking in the context of the story and recognizing the situation that they're in. But I think it's also shocking the way that people perceive the world differently now, and I think that's probably a great improvement for the world.
Okay. Besides the slap, uh, I'd like to know what some of your favorite scenes are. Personally speaking, I really like Tibbs and Gillespie's first meeting, where Gillespie, just like Wood, is already accusing Tibbs of being the murderer, and how he finds out that Tibbs is actually a cop is a great scene, uh, especially when he calls his police captain in Philadelphia. Uh, I think that's a neat first introduction to both Gillespie and an indication of these two are going to be reluctant partners in this investigation. I also like the scene where towards the end they're sharing a drink at Gillespie's house late in the film. It's kind of an indication of where their relationship has gone throughout the film and culminates in that particular scene.
Yeah, I would say that that would be my favorite scene in the film. That's the place where both actors get a chance to shine. And frankly, it's the place where I think Rod Steiger cemented his win as the best actor for that year because that's a great moment. And he shows vulnerability and then quickly withdraws it at the moment that he perceives that he's demonstrated a weakness that, or at least something that he sees as a weakness. And I thought they were both really good in that scene, but Steiger especially, that's where he starts to walk away with the picture.
And for Steiger, that's surprisingly understated for him,
He
in my
does
opinion.
become a bit of a ham over the years,
A
let us
bit.
say. Yeah. There are three scenes that I always remember, and they're not, you know, um, it may be odd that these are the scenes I remember, though I like the film as a whole. And the film you mentioned, it's a good scene when Rod Steiger realizes he's made himself vulnerable in front of a black man, which is something just almost unforgivable. Um, One is that wonderful line where he says, "What do they call you up there in Philadelphia?" And he says, "They call me Mr. Tibbs." Um, and another scene is when Sidney Poitier is with Lee Remick, and Lee Remick starts to break down, and he reaches out to touch her and then pulls back. And the
It's Lee
implication
Grant.
is, as a black man, he has to be very careful in a situation like this. And the other one is, in many ways, very comical. It's which one of the suspects is running across the bridge of the Mississippi River. And I never realized how long that thing is, but it's so long that Rod Steigerson just watches him for a while from his car and then, you know, finally goes after him and gets him. Because if he gets halfway across, then he's free. They can't get him. He's in another state. But that's so exhausting seeing this guy trying to run across a bridge and he just can't get far enough.
Norman Jewison's in an interview said that was his favorite scene from the movie. It was that bridge scene.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, it's a great scene. It's interesting that it would be his favorite. But yeah, that's it's a great moment. The whole chase scene is actually, I thought, really good.
The technical
Um,
stuff on that is really excellent, and I'm sure we're going to get a chance to talk about that in a minute. But that would be my guess as to why Jewison liked it is because of the way he planned the shot and the way the camera operator shot it.
yeah. Um, I would just like to chime in. So all the scenes you guys talked about are great. In particular, the conversation scene. I would just like to also highlight the scene with Virgil and Harvey, played by Scott Wilson, in the jail when they're thrown in the jail cell together, and Virgil has to convince Harvey that he's actually on his side, um, and get him talking about the case, even though he's this young, you know, Southern racist guy who doesn't want to talk to a black man, sees it as an insult to be in the same cell as a black man, but his attitude changes through that scene. I think the whole thing is really great, and what a debut. Like I didn't actually realize until this time that I watched it, the credit for Scott Wilson in this is and introducing Scott Wilson. Because he's great. And I know he would go on to be, a towering figure in American film. And but yeah, what a start. Because that whole scene is excellent. And I think it's also really indicative of Poitier's approach to the character as this sort of like quiet, methodical guy. And the way he approaches everyone in the town is pretty well encapsulated by this one scene. I think it's great. It's really great.
Scott Wilson had a hell of a 1967 because he was also the star of In Cold Blood that same year. Um,
Yeah.
I was reminded, yeah, one more scene I forgot about until just now that I really like is the final scene where Gillespie is taking Tibbs to the train station, and Gillespie carries his suitcase for him, um,
Oh,
which is
yes,
a
he becomes the porter instead of the black man carrying the
yeah.
white man's suitcase.
I thought that was an effective scene too, and again, very understated, not heavy-handed, but it was a neat scene.
Yeah, and just
um,
the last exchange, which is now, of course, very famous, but that really so cements that they are friends and colleagues, not just people forced together. I think it's a great that great moment where Putty breaks into a smile at the end is just a wonderful like small piece of acting, I thought.
Well, both of them finally smile more than a turnip.
Yeah.
well, we can get into the technical aspects now. It is a great looking film, and uh, what surprised me is, and I didn't know this until just recently, very little of this was actually shot in the South. Um, it was mostly shot in Sparta, Illinois, and but you know, it looks like the South, and you can almost feel how hot it is there, um, through the production design and the cinematography. Um, I think it's the film itself is just very atmospheric. You really feel like you're there in this tiny small town, uh, with a broken air conditioner.
Which is amazing because, of course, it was quite cool in Southern Illinois when they were filming it. And it's supposed to be Mississippi in late September, so it would be quite warm, but they struggled to convey that. I thought they did a great job of it. And like you said, it looks, the town it's a small town. It's got its rundown sections. It's got its developed sections. It looks like probably 1,000 small towns looked all around the country in different places. What's different is the culture, not so much the architecture and structure of things there.
Yeah, I've been in towns like this. There's a town in Washington very similar to this, called Grandview, and it has a service station like that. It's got a police station like that, um, a pool hall like that. Doesn't quite have a bridge like that, but yeah, I feel it's one of those towns that I feel like I've been there before. Um,
Well, what's interesting, you mentioned the bridge, and we talked about it before. it's supposed to be running across the Mississippi, and it actually does, even though it's not filmed in Mississippi. It's still crossing the Mississippi just at the northern part of the river instead of the southern part of the river. I think that's kind of funky that they actually used a bridge that spans the Mississippi. And
Okay.
one of the technical things that I think we need to talk about is the way the film is shot. There's a when Scott Wilson's character is being chased through the woods. This is, they didn't have a steady cam, uh, but it's really a point of view sort of chase where we're getting a low angle on him as he's running through the brush and the bushes and the trees and the leaves, and it's a precursor to the shaky cam kinds of things that are so prevalent in the last couple of decades. Uh, but it was certainly done with some different techniques and skill that exist now. And I think it's a good looking scene. And like I said, the chase that finishes it up. Somebody's already mentioned that Jewison thought that was, he liked that scene as best in the film. Um, there's also some talk about the way the film was lighted. If I don't know if somebody else wants to mention that.
Well, it was difficult in some ways to photograph black actors because the light would flatten out their features. So they had to develop new ways of doing that. And Haskell Wexler, who did the cinematography, was very careful in how he photographed Sidney Poitier for that. This also happened in The Wiz, where they were developing new ways to photograph uh, black actors, so the features wouldn't wash out as much.
Well, I think when people talk about systemic issues, the fact is that all the lighting was done by old school cinematographers who had a way of lighting a particular scene and they stuck to it. And Haskell Wexler's lighting is different. It's adapting to the actor as opposed to just the scene. Although there are several places where the scenes are also lit in a very interesting way. I mean, you get a lot of dark scenes where you can't see anything except a few pieces of light in the background. And I think the film looks really good when it's at night. It looks good during the daytime scenes too, but the nighttime scenes I think are particularly striking.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The use
Yeah.
of light to like reveal faces and features and things in scenes as they progress is really sort of immaculately done. Especially not to give away the ending, but at the end when you finally learn who the bad guy is, and he's cast in shadow. Um, all of that is, in some ways feels fairly. Someone might argue that it's basic, but I would argue that it's actually like pretty fundamentals of filmmaking, excellently done. Just having a man in shadow who like you can tell who he is if you've been paying attention, and then having him move into the light is all wonderful. And then again, just to come back to that prison scene, the way the light is cast on Virgil's face and body as he's having that conversation with Scott Wilson is also just wonderful. Just really highlights the whole vibe of Poitier's character. It's a it's a really wonderfully made film, really.
There's something very unnerving about the nighttime scenes when they're in a car because you can't see anything. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but when you look out and to the side, it's totally dark, and you can only see things from the light on the of the cars, and it's very unnerving because
This
in
really
real life
hammers
you'll be
home.
able to see something, but here it's just totally pitch black.
I actually think that's interesting because I think it really hammers home how small of a town it must be. Because
Yes,
I've definitely been
definitely.
in towns like that where it's pitch black except where the high beams go, where the headlights go, and you're right. Like where I live here in Vancouver, you'd be able to see everything all the time. But where I grew up, very much you're like if the light isn't shining in that place, you just don't see that place. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting highlight.
It makes Dolores Purdy's parading around at night in the lighted house a little bit more obvious too.
There's a line about that where someone's talking about her parading around the house with all the lights on at night, and like again, like Here in the city, maybe you wouldn't notice, but I can guarantee you if that was my hometown, everyone would know. It was so yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Everyone but the police chief, apparently.
Apparently, yeah. Everyone but the willfully ignorant, we'll say.
That's it.
I wanted to move on to the cast. Uh, Obviously, starting with Poitier. I think the way he plays Tibbs is just pretty much note perfect. Cool but capable. Um, but capable of getting angry. And I like how the character is established in the film when Officer Wood accosts him in the train station, automatically assuming this black stranger is the killer. And Tibbs's reaction is interesting because it's wordless, either because he's faced this kind of racism plenty of times before, or expected to because he's in the South. And Poitier's face during that scene where he's being frisked and shaken down, it's a great piece of wordless acting. Um, and it does set the tone for the character too. Um, it's probably my favorite role of his. Uh, I do want to mention a couple of other ones that maybe a lot of people don't talk about. He was also good in a 1988 film called Shoot to Kill, which is really hard to find now. I don't know how many of you have seen that, but
I
he
saw
is
it in 1988, but I haven't seen it since.
me either. I can't find it anywhere, but it's worth seeking out. Uh, Regarding Poitier, what are some of your favorite roles that he's appeared in? So, starting with Richard.
Oh, well, in this particular year, of course, he had two other pretty significant hits. He had To Sir with Love and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which was also nominated for Best Picture. And he's great in those. I kind of like the defiant ones, with Tony Curtis. I think that's, an early role for him where he's a breakout star and he's sharing the screen with maybe one of the most handsome men that ever existed. Tony Curtis was a good-looking guy in his youth, and they both come across as real people, despite the fact that Tony Curtis is a movie star, and Sidney Poitier at the time was probably, it's early in his career, like I said, and I thought he was pretty striking in that. There are several things that I haven't seen that he's been in that I wish I'd seen. Porgy and Bess is one of those ones that's like Shoot to Kill, hard to find. It's not really accessible the way a lot of films are. Um, so I haven't seen that. Uh, I'm trying to remember which of the Viking films he was in, but I liked one of
I think
those.
it's the Vikings. I think it's just the Vikings with Kirk Douglas, isn't it?
Or is it?
But I think it's just the Vikings.
It's Richard Widmark, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
He also did a great film with Richard Widmark called The Bedford Incident. Um,
Yeah, that is considered the first movie where a black actor plays a role where it's not required that he be black. It's not about his being black.
mhm.
So it's considered sort of important from that perspective.
He also got paid more for doing the Bedford incident than he did for this movie. Although this movie ultimately would make him more money because he had a percentage. The movie was made in large part because he agreed to star in it. And that made the money flow a little bit more easily, and he was a profit participant as a result.
Moving
There are
on.
two
Oh, go ahead.
there are two roles or two movies I'll point out. I'm not sure, well, maybe three. I'm not sure you can um, say there might be his greatest or not, but I'll point out the Slender Thread, where he is a suicide crisis uh, person who gets a call from Anne Bancroft, who has tried to kill herself. A Patch of Blue, where he defends a young blind girl. And then I highly recommend Uptown Saturday Night. Saturday Night. He directed it and he is in it. You'll see all sorts of people in it. It's very funny. The studios didn't know what to do with it, but I really loved it. It should be noted that this was the peak of his career. That after that, I don't suppose you can say he went downhill, but it was never nearly as popular now. And that's because the reason why he was so big at this time is that he was accepted by white audiences. And the reason why he was accepted by white audiences, he was the one black actor that they felt you could trust around white women, that he wasn't going to try to have sex with them. That's what made him actually perfect for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, even though, of course, he's getting married to her. That had changed, and we're starting to get after this into the black exploitation films. We're getting people like Harry Belafonte and people and Shaft and things like that. And his time, in many ways, had come to pass. He still worked, he directed, but his career was never the same.
I just, yeah, I'd like to chime in though and say that he is in a couple of films that were important to me in the 90s, uh, just to highlight the sort of latter part of his career. I've always been a big fan of the 19, I guess 97 version of The Jackal with Richard Gere and Bruce Willis, which I don't know if it's a good movie, but I've always loved that movie.
Same
I
here.
can't be objective about it, but it's a
It's a fun
fun,
movie.
yeah. And then of course, uh, it's interesting. I think underrated is the wrong way to say this, but I adore Sneakers, which is a 1992 film about a team of security specialists, and everyone is great in it, but he is great in it. And if I don't want to spoil any part of it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but if you haven't seen it, Sneakers from 1992 is a great film,
Not
and a great Sidney Poitier, I thought.
not underrated, but definitely underseen, at least today.
And yeah, I just feel like we don't talk about it enough as a society, basically. Um, and not to derail things a little bit, but Shoot to Kill, is that the one where he's like a cop or an FBI guy chasing Clancy Brown through the
Yeah,
Pacific Northwest? I love that
yeah,
movie. I haven't seen it since the
Oh,
90s.
yes, I remember that now. That was with, is it Tom Berenger or something?
Yeah.
yeah.
Is
I don't.
Kirstie
Oh,
Alley the
okay.
female lead in that?
Yeah, and I don't get it. It was put out by Touchstone
Well,
Pictures, and
it
so that's
it was just
Disney.
mediumly received, I think. It was considered more of a routine action film, but it is very entertaining. I saw it in theaters and thought, oh, this was entertaining.
But that movie is a special place in my heart because the climax of it takes place in Vancouver, and it it plays very fast and loose with the geography of Vancouver. There's a great scene where they're chasing a guy
Movies
through
always
downtown.
do.
Oh,
Yeah.
but like this is one of the first ones I saw it when I was younger, and it was one of the first ones where I realized that really happens because it's a scene where they're literally it's a car chase through downtown Vancouver, and then they turn around a corner and suddenly they're at the ferry terminal, which is 30 kilometers away. So, in real life. So yeah, it's that I really enjoyed that movie. It's very Pacific Northwest and it's very Vancouver and I loved it for that. But yeah, it's impossible to find now.
Well, when you guys say it's impossible to find, you must be talking about streaming because I'm looking at eBay and you can buy it on DVD for $8.
Yeah, but there's no like recent 4K release or anything like that.
No, you're right.
Feel
Well,
like
it takes time.
I don't.
we're leaving films behind for money reasons and it bothers me, but that's a different podcast.
And I don't trust eBay. I sound like an old man yelling at clouds. Moving on to Rod Steiger, who plays Chief Gillespie. It's a funny introduction, especially with Steiger just vigorously chomping that gum, um, like he's trying to quit smoking or something. He's quickly established as being as racist as everyone else in town, but perhaps just a little bit smarter, and obviously out of his element when it comes to a murder investigation. Um, and Gillespie's not exactly loved around town either, and he doesn't appear to be too respected by his own men. Um, and this character undergoes the biggest character change during the film. And uh, I'm not the biggest Rod Steiger fan. I think he is often descends into hamminess. and scenery chewing.
You
Um,
think?
and he,
You
yeah,
think?
and he does a bit of that here, but it suits the character. And there are moments, and we've talked about a couple of them before, where his performance is pretty affecting, and you kind of develop a little bit of sympathy for the guy. You know, he nicely conveys loneliness without outwardly saying it. Um, but yeah, for me, he was the biggest surprise in the movie because I fully expected him just to go full Steiger throughout the entire movie, and he doesn't. Um, and again,
Oddly
other
enough, this was also the peak of his career because
yeah,
after winning the Oscar, he's often called one of the results of the Oscar curse, where if you win it, then you have a hard time coming back from that. And he was making some really bad decisions on movies after this, like The Sergeant and Waterloo and things like that. But he is very good here. He's very good in Pawnbroker before this. And I was just on the Forgotten Film podcast where we discussed The Chosen, which is a little scene film where he plays an Hasidic rabbi that I highly recommend, where he barely chooses scenery in that one. I don't know how they got him not to do it, but they held him down.
um, other notable roles for me anyway. Of course, his supporting role in On the Waterfront, and like you said, the pawnbroker. But if you want to see Steiger at his goofiest and his hammiest, definitely check out the sci-fi anthology film The Illustrated Man,
Oh yeah.
uh, which is pretty entertaining if you ingest enough mushrooms first. But my
Oh, that was
God,
my mistake.
I would actually just interject and say if you want to see Rod Steiger at his most Rod Steigeriest, then 1996's Mars Attacks is a great option for that. In which
it's
I'm
almost
pretty
like
sure they hired him specifically to be Rod Steiger in that movie.
Which movie?
Mars
Mars
Attacks,
Attacks.
Okay.
yeah,
which
it's kind of
I don't know if that's a good movie, but I love that movie.
it's not a good movie, but it's fun to
It
watch,
has
and
its moments.
it has
Yeah,
its moments, and
but
he's kind of self-parody there.
yeah, it's very like he's very much like we need a Rod Steiger type for this movie. Oh, Rod Steiger's available. Is yeah, it's pretty great.
He's got a good hammy scene in Amityville Horror also.
He's the priest in that one, isn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
He has, and his co-stars in his scene are flies.
Any other Steiger films we should talk about before moving on?
Like I know it's very
Well,
specific
never
to
give
me,
him
but
a. Mm.
sorry, I was going to say it's very specific to me, but he's he's pretty great in the 1999 Schwarzenegger film End of Days, which again, not a good film, but I very much enjoy every time I watch it every year at New Year's. Um, and he's also great in oh, what's it called? It's on the tip of my tongue. Denzel Washington box The Hurricane. He's great as the judge in The Hurricane. In I think it's also 99 or 98.
Oh, I remember him. That my favorite line is "You were wrong."
Yeah.
And
I say
well,
never give him an accent to do though.
I'll just throw
If he
in
tries, yeah.
he did the Russian accent fine in the film that I'm going to mention, and that's Dr.
Oh
Zhivago.
yeah.
He's got a good part in that, and he manages to carry that off without getting too hammy.
Well, he's not speaking English there, is he? That probably helps because when he tries to do Irish or British, he's really rubbish.
Got to talk about Warren Oates. One of the unsung MVPs of this movie, in my opinion. Warren Oates has always been so fun to watch. Uh, he's great at playing tough guys, especially ones that you're not necessarily expected to like. He doesn't really play a tough guy here, but he does a terrific job of making the viewer immediately hate him. And he turns out to be kind of a seedy, slimy character. And it was a sad day when Warren Oates passed because he always had that knack for making even mundane films watchable in a scene or two. Um,
Yeah, he's a
I,
great supporting actor, and sometimes a lead actor, but he's a great supporting actor. That even if you may not like the rest of the film, there he is. I mean, his two-lane blacktop performance is really outstanding, and he should have got an Oscar nomination, but did.
That one's on my list of shame.
And as a huge fan of Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, I'm going to endorse his
Mhm.
performance there.
The one I'm endorsing is his lead role in Dillinger.
He was
Um,
excellent in Dillinger. Oh
yeah.
yes, that is his best performance, I think.
Oh, it's just such a fun film. I mean, it's a gangster movie for people who don't think they like gangster movies, and he just tears it up. Just lots of fun, that movie.
I mean, I'll chime in and say my earliest introduction to him is actually the latest part of his career. He's great in both Stripes and Blue Thunder from 81 and
Oh
83,
yeah,
Yeah.
respectively.
love him in Stripes.
He's got some of the best lines in Blue Thunder.
He does, yeah.
What do you check your sanity with? A dipstick?
It reminds me I need to rewatch Blue Thunder. It's been too long.
That's another movie that's fun when you don't think about it. Um, I wanted to talk about Anthony James a little bit. He's one of those faces that probably everybody knows, but they don't know who he is. He's always, to me, been one of the scariest looking guys in movies. He's one of those guys you see in a lot of TV, and a lot of movies and TV. He's almost always a supporting actor, usually a bad guy, and he's the guy who is behind the counter at the diner, who's more important to the plot than we're initially led to believe. But he's wonderful in this movie. He's just so the performance is
he,
so
he
weird,
he
and
has a terrific scene where he breaks into the jukebox so he can play a song that he likes, and then he's kind of dancing to that song. And it's they actually had to use a different song because they couldn't get the rights to it, but the song that they used matched up pretty well with the song that I was actually playing on set. But that's great. It's exactly he's acting like a creep. He's he's tormenting Sam Woods, the police officer played by Warren Oates, by denying him a slice of pie on a regular basis, and he's just he dominates those scenes. And you're right, he always played the villainous kind of characters. He was one of the hitchhikers that gets picked up in uh, I think it was Vanishing Point,
hmm
and then there's another the of course the interesting thing about there's a lot of stuff that's interesting about Anthony James, but the I think the nice piece of trivia is that his film debut and his last film were two Academy Award winning movies because his last film was Unforgiven, where he played Skinny, the owner of the billiards parlor
hmm
that's that where all the women worked in the
Yeah,
Clint Eastwood film.
another role that stands out for me is he's one of the three bad guys in High Plains Drifter.
Yep.
Um, Not the scariest of all of them, but it's an indelible presence. Uh, and he's also in Blue Thunder in a small role.
Yep.
Who runs over Lyman Good, I believe. His face when he's running over that character is kind of freaky too.
I don't
He
know the
does.
actor's name who's in the Nice Guys, but he plays the actor who gets the blue stain on his face. Anthony James would have been that part if he
Oh
is
yeah,
working at that point.
for sure. He definitely has that. I mean, you already said the one I was going to bring up, which was Unforgiven. But hey, just for fun, he's in The Naked Gun 2.5 as well.
And he's
Um,
funny in that.
he's very funny in that. But he definitely had like when you look at the even if you just look him up on IMDb right now, like the image they've chosen as his like profile picture is like delightfully creepy. Like he just has that face. I'm sure he was a lovely man in real life, but he has that like, just down like if he tilts his head down and looks forward, suddenly he's the creepiest person on the planet. And I think that when deployed really well, as he is in this movie, he can really leverage that into his performance. It's great.
Okay, we've already talked a lot about Scott Wilson. I do want to shout out In Cold Blood, which was released the same year. He is really good in that too, and you know along with Robert Blake. I mean he definitely proved early on that he can carry a movie, and it's kind of sad that he didn't get as many opportunities to do that as I think he should have. Um,
I never quite understood why or what happened He seemed to be going in the right direction, but I don't know.
He does,
Yeah, I don't know what it is. He's definitely became a bit of like a guy on TV. Like he was in a bunch of TV movies. Then later in his career, he was definitely in CSI and The Walking
CSI, yeah.
Dead and like the totally underrated and super super weird The OA. He's great in that too.
If you guys are
Um,
looking for a movie that he stars in that might be interesting, off the beaten path, Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane, also known as the Ninth Configuration, is really solid, and he's excellent in it.
and he worked with William Peter Blatty in The Exorcist 3. He has a small but very memorable role as a doctor in that one, uh, a chain smoking doctor, and he's really good in that as well.
it's interesting because he really went on to be, he could have had this trajectory as a leading guy, but he really turned out to be a super reliable side, like supporting and character actor. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but definitely I don't quite get why he never became, I said before he's a bit of a towering figure, and I think he is, but I don't get why he was never towering in the lead in the same way?
And
Well, we need good character actors, like you said, and sometimes maybe it's best that somebody sticks with the character actor parts. That way they don't get pigeonholed into just one kind of role.
Yeah, and
he
it's
did,
interesting too, because he literally like, a lot of his 70s films, he's in The Great Gatsby, he's in um Ninth Configuration, which I think it's actually 1980, isn't it? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, by the 90s and early zeros, he's really come into his own as like sh just showing up in things and running away with the scenes he's in. Um, and that's definitely a guy you want to have around. But again, it's kind of weird. He was never, you know, from this debut, I would have thought like, oh, that guy's going to be a huge star. And it just never quite materialized in that way.
I don't. I think the two films that he made in '67 are the two where he's the most electric on screen, and then after that, he plays parts that are not quite as eclectic or unusual or interesting, and maybe just a little too more typical.
He's certainly never showy.
Yeah,
no,
Like even in these ones, I would agree he's definitely electric on screen in this one in particular, but he's never a big showy actor.
right.
Um, very few of the films I've seen him in does he have like a they call me Mr. Tibbs type scene, right? He's always far more understated, far more deliberate. Um, and maybe that's why, like I'm on record many times as saying the Academy is usually about most acting rather than best acting, and he's never been a most actor.
that's well put. Okay, moving on. Lee Grant, she's not actually in the movie all that much, and I think the role that she's been given is borderline thankless. She's really good in the few scenes that she's in. Um, but my favorite role of hers, and forgive me for saying this, is her part in Airport 77, uh, where she just overacts tremendously, um, chewing up the scenery in the way that Rod Steiger could only dream of. And it's a fun performance. I know she won Oscars for other films or for another film, but she is so entertaining in that movie. Uh, Definitely my
Well,
favorite Lee Grant role.
she was the victim of the blacklist,
Yeah,
and it somewhat traumatized her. So she didn't work in film for a while. This was one of her comeback roles in movies. She also did Divorce American Style the same year, The Valley of the Dolls. Um, so she did manage to come back, but she went to stage and went to television where it was easier to find work if you were on the blacklist.
and she talks about that in the Criterion disc that it affected her career for, I want to say, a decade, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. She did a couple of independent films and little things, and then TV. Movies were the last to recover from the blacklist. Theater was first, then television.
She went on to be a fairly prolific TV director as well. Um, But yeah, interesting. I don't really have a favorite performance of hers. I couldn't say that I've seen too many of them, but you much like your list of shame. I have never seen Shampoo, so maybe I should fix that this year.
Oh,
No,
she's fun in that.
yeah, Shampoo would have been my favorite of her performances. She's very good in that.
And she won an Oscar for it. That's the one she won an Oscar for. So
Yeah.
I
Was it?
I've never seen it, so I should definitely rectify that.
Wasn't Voyage of the Dam that she won the Oscar?
No, she was
Uh,
nominated for it, but
yeah.
Okay,
she won for Shampoo. And it was
okay.
I kind of look at her Academy Award nomination. She had one in the early 50s, then you don't see anything, and then in the 70s she had three fairly close together and won one of them. So you can tell that there was a big break in her activity. Uh,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
as
same with her Golden Globe nominations. There's that same one in 1951, and then she actually got nominated for this one for a Golden Globe, and then the same three that she was nominated for Oscars after this were Golden Globe nominations. She didn't win any of those though.
and as of right now, she's still with us, which is nice.
she must be
Uh,
like 98, 99.
yeah, she's up there in years, um, for
I'm
sure.
just looking at her Wikipedia. According to that, they don't have a specific date, so but they say she's 98 to 100. So yes.
Good for her. Well, speaking of Oscars, In the Heat of the Night won the Oscar for Best Picture that year. Other nominees were Bonnie and Clyde, Dr. Dolittle, The Graduate, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And by the way, that last one, I'm sad to say, is on my list of shame. Um,
No, it's not.
okay.
Howard
Well,
says you don't need to be ashamed about not seeing it. It's not a great film. It's a good film, and in its time it was kind of important, but it is, what would you say? When we talked about
Well,
Oscar bait kinds of things, there you go. This is an early example of let's make a movie that's designed to be socially important and give performers something to flex their muscle on and hope that people pay attention to it. And they did.
I
when
guess
Green Book came out, my favorite uh, comment about it was it's the best film about race relations of 1967. So,
I guess the reason I want to see it is because I'm a big Spencer Tracy fan, and I believe that was
well,
his
yeah, I mean,
last.
I'm not saying don't see it, but it's not like,
You don't
you
have to
know,
hang your head in shame for not having seen it. It's
yeah,
a
Okay.
it's
it's
a
it's kind of dated.
I'm going to say you should see it specifically because I think in its moment it was important. And although I would agree that it is probably a little dated now, it's been a while since I've seen it. It's definitely one that would, I think you should see it because it was important in its moment and it would help you maybe understand the 60s a little better or differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's definitely one where like it's not going to eliminate anything you don't know about today, um, but it will definitely deepen your understanding of what things were like in 1967.
When we did our look back show on 1967 a couple of years ago, um, the book Pictures at the Revolution came up, and
Yeah, that was me.
it talks about the five films that were nominated for Best Picture that year, and included, of course, with In the Heat of the Night is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and there's a lot of good information there about the film, and it does give it a little bit of context. But I think historically, people would say, when you look at the films, the right film won.
Oh yeah,
Well,
for sure.
no, I don't have to disagree
Howard,
with that.
were you a
But
graduate guy?
no, I was Bonnie and Clyde all the way.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
Bonnie and Clyde, yeah.
Bonnie and
this was
Clyde is still one of the most important films in the 1960s. But if you haven't read at a Revolution, definitely do so because it considers 1967 to be one of the most revolutionary year for the Oscars, in which the New Hollywood and the studios were fighting for supremacy. And on the studio side, we have the old-fashioned Dr. Dolittle and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And on the new Hollywood, we have Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate. So in the heat of the night became the compromise winner as something that was still a little bit studio, but also was edgy enough to show the beginning of the new Hollywood.
So Howard would call it the compromise winner. I would call it the consensus winner.
Well, you guys are kind of beating me to the actual question I have, but that's
Okay.
okay. I'm gonna ask it anyway. Did In the Heat of the Night deserve to win Best Picture, and if not, which should have? Uh, for me, this one does get a slight edge over Bonnie and Clyde, but take that with a grain of salt because I still think The Dirty Dozen was the best movie from that year. So, uh, but we already know what Howard thinks.
Yes, Bonnie and Clyde, Team Bonnie and Clyde is
I thought for a long time that In the Heat of the Night was probably the wrong choice, but every time I've seen it, I think more and more, nope, that was the right choice. And I like Bonnie and Clyde quite well. And I also think that The Graduate is a fantastic film, and it you can see exactly, some of the changes in tone and approach and storytelling that are occurring in Hollywood at the time. And Michael Nichols won the award for Best Director for that film, and Norman Jewison did not. So it's one of those cases where I'm not sure why they separate the two, in terms of what was accomplished. I know there's a lot of differences between directing and just the best picture, but it seems very difficult to me especially after having just watched the film and seeing all the things that Jewison did to make this film work, uh, that he didn't get the same honors that his coworkers were getting, and so that's a little strange. But I would say it was the right choice. And if not, maybe the best choice, the consensus choice.
Matt,
I mean, I don't really have much to add to this. I think that In the Heat of the Night is a fine winner, fine choice. Um, Fine meaning like good, not just okay. Um, it's certainly the film of the ones here. It's certainly the one I come back to the most. Although I should really change. I haven't seen Bonnie and Clyde since I was in my 20s, so I should really change that. Um, but I think it's a great winner for the time. I think it's a great winner for the year. I am very much in my middle age of the opinion that the awards don't actually matter.
No, they don't.
Um, so it winning, I think, is good, and I think that even if it hadn't won, it would remain culturally relevant. Um, and my only note here would be that if you'd asked 10-year-old me, I definitely would have said Dr. Dolittle. So, um, but that's
I've been
because
able to get through Dr. Dolittle. I think I've
my
tried, but I
grandmother
just can't get through
my
it.
grandmother had it on a double VHS that I wore out when I was like 8, 9, 10 or so. Um, and Rex Harrison can't sing, but he sure does sing in that movie. It's very silly, and yeah, 10-year-old me would have chosen it, but yeah, middle-aged me says that In the Heat of the Night is probably the consensus winner is probably the best way to put it based on what you guys are talking about, but I think it's also the correct winner for the moment.
10-year
Even
old me
though,
still would have chosen The Dirty Dozen.
yeah, fair enough. Even though I would agree with Howard that Bonnie and Clyde is probably one of the most important and formative movies of the 60s for sure. I think this just also happens to be one of those two.
With In the Heat of the Night, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And To Serve with Love. That was a good year for Poitier, and didn't get a single acting nomination, but Steiger did. He won an Oscar for this role. My next question is, considering who his other nominees were, Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman, Spencer Tracy, and Paul Newman, did he deserve that Oscar? Uh, my
That's a good
opinion is,
question.
uh, no one murders a stick of gum like Steiger. Uh, but of those guys, I do think Beatty, Hoffman, and Newman all gave better, more nuanced performances. And of those, I would probably pick Paul Newman. What say you?
Yeah.
It's a
If
good
I was
question.
choosing, it would probably be Paul Newman. Um, but I don't begrudge this win at all. I think he's great in the movie. I think that conversation late in the film that we talked about a lot, really is what cemented it home. And oftentimes it feels like these come down to singular moments in film, and that moment in the film cementing him and winning. Totally fine by me. But if it were up to me, yeah, probably Paul Newman.
Rim is a good choice. I might have gone with Team Bonnie and Clyde and Warren Beatty, but it's hard to say.
Well, I have nothing but respect for Cool Hand Luke. That's a great film, and Paul Newman is terrific in it. But I think it's a perfect illustration of one of those things that was always a problem with his career. He'd give these fantastic performances in a year that somebody else was also giving a fantastic performance and might very well have deserved the award, but context changes things. And the context at this time was, we had the social upheaval that was going on in the country, and this film addressed that issue. And just a year or two prior, uh, Rod Steiger was basically robbed of the Academy Award for The Pawnbroker, and I think there was a little bit of this make good kind of thing that's going on there as well. I'm not saying that he wasn't terrific in the part. I think he was terrific in the part, and in the long run, I would probably vote for Steiger if I was, a voting member of the Academy back in 1967. But you know what, the times might have changed things a little bit if I was voting in 1919. Geez, forget what century I'm in 2026. Sorry about that, guys.
I mean, my main note about the nominees in this category, other than that, I think they're all great, just to be clear. But I was kind of surprised that Poitier wasn't nominated at all. And I know that's probably because he won a few years earlier for
And he
Louis
also had three movies, so
and yeah, he had three, so
that's
probably split the vote a little bit. But
Yeah.
like, it's still kind of
that can hurt you.
surprised.
It doesn't always, but it can.
Yeah, I mean, it introduces some vote splitting and again, like he won. It was only like 2 or 3 years. I don't remember what year that was. 63, 64. I know he won a few years before. Um,
Yeah, it was maybe
and
3 or 4 years before.
so like that can be a thing too. But like, I was kind of surprised that like he wasn't nominated at all because I do think he's kind of, as previously mentioned on the show, kind of note perfect in the role.
Okay. This film had two sequels, which I didn't know about until later. They Call Me Mr. Tibbs and The Organization. I have not seen either of these films, though as usual, I mean to get around to them eventually. So, but have
Well,
you
I've seen
any?
They Call Me Mr. Tips.
What'd you think of it?
It's not very good.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a great idea to continue on with Tibbs and uh, to have a franchise out of him, but no, it wasn't particularly well written. Martin Landau is not particularly good um,
He
in
seldom
the
is.
movie. Yeah, I mean, somehow later in life he became much a better actor out of nowhere. But yeah, he's not particularly good here. So yeah, it doesn't look interesting. It's not that clever mystery or anything like that. So, but I haven't seen the organization.
I haven't seen either of them, and I swore I have a Blu-ray somewhere that has both of them on it. I looked for it yesterday because I watched the film that we're talking about today, and I said, "Well, let me watch the sequels." And I looked for them, and I couldn't find them, and I'm going, I know I bought it. I can't find it. It's frustrating to me. So I still haven't seen either of them, so I can't comment on their content. But obviously, it must have done well enough. The second one must have done well enough to justify doing the third one. And the character, of course, is the subject that is being franchised here, because I don't think either of those movies were based on the original books that were written about that character.
There was more than one book.
I think so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I could be wrong. I've
No,
been wrong once or twice before, but
I'm
I'm not sure.
pretty sure you're right, actually. I think that at least the second one. I was reading about this the other day when we were in preparation for this. The second one, I think, is based on a book, although changes the like location and part of the mystery, something like that. I don't know about the third one though. I haven't seen either. My understanding is that the second one is fine and the third one is bad. And yeah, that all sort of lines up with what I would expect from sequels to a film like this. I don't know why, but there's a number of movies from the 60s that I later in life learned that they got sequels that weren't very good, and I'm just no longer surprised by it.
Okay, Matt, as you mentioned, this was a TV series in the late 80s and early 90s starring Carol O'Connor and Howard Rollins, and it ran for 6 or 7 years. And
Hmm.
I might have seen an episode or two, but I don't really have any memory of it. Uh, so my experience is negligible. If any of you have seen this program, what were your thoughts on it, and how does it compare to the film?
I'll
I
just
mean,
tell you, I
I don't
haven't
think it's
seen
as
it.
good as, yeah, I don't think it's as good as the movie, but it did run for, it ran for like 7 years, I think, and I think it switched from NBC to CBS at some point, like around season 4 or 5. It was kind of a big deal at the time because Carol O'Connor hadn't been in anything since Archie Bunker's Place, which ended in like the early 80s. So it was like his grand return to TV. Um, and interestingly, it was also set contemporarily. So like it wasn't set in the 70s, 60s or 70s. It was set in the 80s and 90s. And then whenever like events from the movie come up, they're just like, oh yeah, that was a few years ago type thing. Um, and it's a pretty standard, like just really well made, but pretty standard um 80s police procedural show. It does tackle some of the same themes, racism in the South. Um, and because it ran for so long, it definitely tackles more. Um, it's I mean, it's a good show. It was a good show. I don't think it was one necessarily for the history books, um, in the same way that some other iconic 80s shows might have been, but it was a solid show that ran for a long time and was very well performed by the people in it, and touched on social issues in the way that the film, or at least attempted to touch on social issues in the same way that the film did. So it's I have very fond memories of it for sure.
Okay, it doesn't seem like you know conducive to a TV series treatment, but
There's
there's a lot.
a number of changes as well. Like I distinctly remember that he's Virgil's not just passing through town at the beginning, he's from the town.
Mhm.
And he's there like I think in the opening he's there to like go to his mother's funeral or something like that. And Gillespie says like, "Hey, you're back. Would you stay?" Basically, would you stay this time? Can I hire you this time? And that's the sort of kickoff. And um, he has a wife and a kid, and there's a whole bunch of additions to round out the cast. And I don't know, it's interesting. Like if you like police procedurals, which could maybe be a hot button issue these days, but if you like police procedurals and you like 80s TV, then like it's a solid 80s police procedural. That's pretty much what it boils down to. For me, I'm having a hard time just describing it because I know that my memory is clouded by nostalgia of like sitting in my grandmother's living room and watching it with her. Um, but hey, it ran for 7 or 8 years on two different networks. Couldn't have been all bad.
All right. So I'm just at final thoughts now. Uh, In the Heat of the Night to me is an entertaining mystery thriller that still feels timely. It explores racial tensions in the South during the 60s without ever sermonizing or becoming heavy handed. And yeah, I'd like to think such racial disparity like this doesn't exist anymore, but I suspect that it probably does. Um, but it holds up very well for a 59-year-old film, and its rewatchability factor is pretty high.
I think it's also a very
Anyway,
enjoyable film. It's a very interesting mystery. It's well made. It's well acted. I can't fault it. The only thing I can fault it for is when, for some reason, Virgil Tibbs goes off walking alone. He doesn't take a ride back to town. I'm going, you can't go off walking a road in a town where everybody wants to kill you. So that was the only weird aspect of it that I thought. But other than that, it's very entertaining. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, I love this movie. Uh, like I say, I purchased it at the last Criterion sale, and I've watched it twice since I since I purchased it, and that was only 3 months ago, maybe four. Um, and it's one of those films that also I appreciate more every time I watch. So yeah, I'm glad it exists. I'm glad we're talking about it.
And I'll just add that I think it's a terrific film from an era that needed a film like this. If you put it into context, the year that it won the Academy Award, the Academy Awards had to be postponed a couple days because Martin Luther King was assassinated, and we had racial strife all over the place. And this is a film that tried to directly confront that without turning it into the main issue of the film. It tells an interesting procedural story with the racial issue as an important component of what's going on, and it reflects issues of the time. Dave mentioned his list of shame. I, I'm going to put this on my list of shame because I looked for it all day yesterday. I swore I had a copy of it, and I didn't. I ended up having to stream it. And I can't believe that I don't own a copy of it because I'm a physical media guy, and uh, In the Heat of the Night is an essential film for me. All right, Dave, I want to thank you very much for hosting the discussion. I also want to thank you for suggesting the movie. I think we had a great discussion on this, and I appreciated everybody showing up for this conversation. We're going to take a quick break here to hear from a fellow podcasting show, and then we'll be back with our exit question of the week.
In a world where podcasts already seem to address every imaginable subject, one man broke new ground with a seemingly random obsession about exploding helicopters in movies. He was a podcaster on the edge, a maverick broadcaster who played by his own rules. Now, he has a last chance to talk about the strange way helicopters explode in film. Exploding Helicopter, available on iTunes and Podomatic now. Think you know about chopper fireballs? Think again.
We're back, and we're talking about an important film in an important decade, the 60s, the social strife that was going on at the time. 1968, the year the film won the Academy Award in. It was released earlier in the previous year. We had riots and war going on and in the street protests, and it was a tumultuous time. And when people think of the 60s, they often think of those times, that defines the decade. Well, films often define the decades that they're in. And so the question that I came up with was really pretty straightforward. Which decade do you think had the best 10 winners of the Best Picture Award? And I excluded the 20s since there were only two or three films that would have qualified, and I excluded the 2020s because we only had 4 or 5 years here. So the decades in between are your options. The 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the aughts, and the tens. Which decade do you think had the best lineup of 10 films that you could say those are the highest quality of the movies? We got a better percentage of success in our picks in that decade than any other. And Matthew, I'm going to ask you to go first since you seem well prepared to answer these kinds of questions.
Usually I am, but I can't make a decision here. So come back around to me
We'll come back
because,
around. I've been proven wrong on numerous occasions, and once again, it shows up here on the Lambcast.
and
Howard,
it's not for lack of preparation. It's just that I can't choose.
indecisive.
Yeah.
I understand completely, by the way, because I struggled a little bit. I finally came down with what is probably going to be a surprise to no one, but we'll wait a little bit for my revelation. Howard, how about you?
Well, to me, this is a no argument. I can't, to be honest, I can't believe you guys are struggling. It's the 1970s. That's the year of Patton, The French Connection, The Godfather, The Sting, The Godfather Part Two, Cuckoo's Nest, Rocky, Annie Hall, The Deer Hunter, and Kramer versus Kramer. I mean, come on, guys, let's get with the agenda here.
I mean, if it helps, the 70s is one of the two that I'm sort of waffling between.
It is. I come down on the 70s. Also, and I didn't think it was a problem. I thought I'm like Howard. I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. I do think that there are other decades that come closer. I was thinking at first that the 60s might very well be in that situation, but then I remembered that there were a few films there that probably nobody remembers with great fondness. They certainly aren't, the kinds of movies that nowadays we think of as being socially significant. They were terrific films and entertainments, but they didn't necessarily carry with them the same kind of weight. But when Howard started listing all those great films from the 70s, I'm thinking, yeah, well, the 60s had West Side Story and Lawrence of Arabia and My Fair Lady and this film. Uh, but it also had, other films that I'm not sure fit into the same category. Oliver and The Sound of Music are very entertaining films. And by the way, one of the strangest things I ever discovered over the years is that the 60s has more musicals that won for Best Picture than any other decade. You would have thought it was the 30s or 40s and maybe even the 50s, but no, the 60s had four Best Picture winners that were musicals, and no other decade had more than a couple. So it's a little strange to me that that is the truth. The other decade that I was considering for a period of time was the 90s because we have some terrific films there that I think most people would think of as being pretty essential. Silence of the Lambs, Unforgiven, Schindler's List, Forrest Gump. Even Braveheart and Titanic, which were incredibly popular films, and sometimes people are a little bit, they second guess sometimes whether or not they deserve the awards. I think that they have great qualities to them that justify them being on the list. But like I said, as a percentage, I think the 70s has it. But Howard and I are in that category, and Matthew's partially in that category. Dave, where are you?
Uh, it was easy for me. It was the 70s. You know, as much as I revere Jaws, I see why One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest won that year, and I feel the same way about most of the other years. Uh, I think there was only one year where I thought the Academy totally dropped the ball, and that was 1979. Uh, it's one of the. I think it was a crime that Kramer versus Kramer beat the likes of Apocalypse Now and all that jazz and Breaking Away and Norma Ray. Um, but other than that, the other nine films that won for Best Pictures, even if I don't personally, enjoy them as much, some of them, uh, I can see why they won Best Picture. So definitely the 70s.
And there's still movies that we watch over and over again. When I see the best pictures from other decades, I don't dislike them necessarily. I think they're well made, they're very good, they're entertaining, but I'm not really drawn to watching them again. I mean, I could watch Annie Hall and The Godfather and The Godfather 2 many times. And yeah, so, and even the ones that I might, and The Fridge Connection I've seen many times, and Patton has seen a couple of times, even the ones that are not the strongest choice, like The Sting or Cuckoo's Nest or Rocky, are still highly entertaining that we rewatch today.
Yeah,
I
I'd
mean, I don't
agree with
know.
the repeatability on those things. Yes. Go ahead, Matthew.
I don't know why I'm waffling about this. Like, it's obviously the 70s, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think what Howard just said really nails it home too, in that, like, looking at the nominees, and I'm not going to list them all because we would be here all day, but looking at the nominees for each year, they're basically all great films. Like, it's just the strongest movie decade, like, end of sentence. Uh, and I'm tempted by the 60s and the 90s for much the same reason that Richard was talking about. But I think ultimately, like, rereading the list of winners just now, it's clearly the 70s as the most consistently good set of winners. Like, most of the films are excellent choices, even if they weren't necessarily like my personal first choices. Whereas, in the 60s and the 90s, I would argue that there's some of my favorite films are that, like, Lawrence of Arabia is in the 60s, West Side Story in the 60s. Um, this movie, In the Heat of the Night, in the 60s. But also, like, I don't care about Oliver so much. I never really want to come back to A Man for All Seasons. My Fair Lady is fine. Like, there's some standout winners in the 60s, but it's not as internally consistent set of winners as the 70s is, and neither is the 90s. Um, And the 90s being important to me because it's my formative decade of film watching. So like, yes, Silence of the Lambs and Unforgiven and Schindler's List. But also,
The English Patient.
I mean, I don't actually even begrudge the English Patient, but the older I get, the more I'm like, really? Forrest Gump was the one we chose? Like really? I don't even think it's a bad film, but really? Shakespeare in Love?
Well, it,
And like really? American Beauty? Really? It's just there's some real highs and some real lows in the 90s. And for me personally,
it is very
anyway.
odd.
So yeah, the 70s is easily, if we're just talking like, if we're talking about my favorite films, there's a lot of other decades that need to be considered. But if we're talking just strictly about which one is the best set of Oscar Best Picture winners, yeah, it's easily the 70s. I don't know why I was thinking about this at all.
Because you wanted to be thoughtful and considerate of the question. Look, I thought it was a loaded question to begin with, so I didn't necessarily think that automatically people would agree with me. But as I looked at the list, the longer I looked at it, I go, "This is not going to be all that controversial," and it wasn't. We seem to have a very good consensus here. The only knock on the '70s choices has already been mentioned by Dave. And you know what? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a perfectly fine film, but it's not the best film of 1975, and we'll just leave it at that. All
But it's
right.
also like, again, it's not a bad win. Like I don't think it's a bad
No,
winner.
no, no, it's not.
Like it's even if it's
Actually, I
everybody's second
do.
choice. Oh,
I
fair
just like
enough.
the film very much, but
Oh, fair enough. I was just gonna say like even if it's everybody's second choice, it's still everybody's second choice, as opposed to
yeah.
like I'm still kind of stupefied by Shakespeare in Love. I don't get it. And I don't think it's a bad film. I just don't think it's anywhere near the best film, even just in the group of nominees from that year. So yeah.
Well, then you may not want to listen to the previous Lambcast episode on unpopular opinions.
No, I mean I do. If someone or slash you is in there defending that film, I would love to listen to it. I haven't yet. I usually do. Um, but I'm actually a big fan of unpopular opinions. And so if you're there to defend, or someone's there to defend Shakespeare in Love for me, I'd love to hear that. I'll actually be on a different podcast later today to defend an underloved film. So yeah, that's exactly my jam. I love when people talk about films they love that aren't necessarily in the consensus.
Well, there's an endorsement for a previous episode of the Lambcast, everybody. Make sure that you
Yeah.
go over and listen to Unpopular Opinions, which will be a recurring film motif on the Lambcast. I'm looking forward to doing it again, at least annually and maybe twice a year. We'll see how that goes. Well, I would like to give my guests a chance to promote anything that they think their audiences would like to turn their eyes and ears towards. So, Howard, let's start with you. I know that you have something in the can that you would like to share.
Well, I was recently on Forgotten Film podcast, where we talked about The Chosen with Rod Steiger and Maximilian Schell. Um, we did the Valentine's Day episode where we um, chose uh, Bronco Billy and uh, Gun Crazy. Uh,
Oh, I love Gun
so
Crazy.
hopefully I'll be able to get that down at some time. But it reminds me of the Marx Brothers line. It says, "Oh, this is easy to read. Even a 5-year-old can do it. Can you give me a 5-year-old? I can't make heads or tails of this." So I'm
I,
missing something.
Matthew, have you got something that you would like people to turn their eyes and ears toward?
Yes, absolutely I do. I'm actually very excited because this very week, or I guess this episode's coming out on a Tuesday, right? So last very week, I launched a new site, which I'm pretty excited about. It's called Northern Reel. You can find it at northernreel.ca, and it is a site that is I'm the publisher of. I have a friend who's the editor of, and we are focusing very specifically on Canadian film, TV, and talent. Um, so.
Oh, are you going to do
Uh,
slings and arrows?
We probably will at some point, yes. The immediate
I
plan
love that.
is the immediate plan right now is just to get going with some writing. So it'll be mostly contemporary reviews and interviews to start. But yes, I have a whole plan for Canadian film history, Canadian TV history, to revisit some classics. I really want to talk about, for example, 32 short films about Glenn Gould just got released on 4K by Criterion. Very much want to talk about that. Um, so yeah, I'm very excited to be focusing very specifically on Canadian content. So check out northernreel.ca.
That sounds
And
great.
there's only two things up so far, but I literally launched it as of the time of recording. I launched it 3 days ago, so it's early days, but I'm very excited by it.
Fresh and new, just in time
Yeah,
for my bloody Valentine.
yeah, exactly.
And Dave, how about you? Have you got something on Free Kittens Movie Guide that you want people to turn their eyes to?
Well, in addition to the usual physical media reviews, I'm going to be trying something new, and it's tentatively called Watching Foreign Films with My Cat. Um, and the first entry is going to be the 1979 Russian film Stalker, which for some reason my cat sat and watched 20 minutes of. So that's coming up in the next couple of weeks.
That sounds fun.
And we will get the cat's opinion, of course.
Of course.
I like that. I like that. And on my side, as usual, I'm just covering the movies that I see in a theater. I'm a couple behind. I still need to catch up on something. Most of them have been rewatches, although I do have one new film, one current film that I have to catch up on. And there are several that I'm going to be seeing today and tomorrow that I'm looking forward to talking about. I will, however, I remind people that one of the films I recently saw in the theater is one of my favorite films, The Quick and the Dead from Sam Raimi, and I got a chance to see it again. So if you go there, you'll see some more love for The Quick and the Dead, and then there are links to the other 4 or 5 things that I've written about The Quick and the Dead over the years. So it's always fun to indulge in something that is just a little esoteric for you, but you know, you're gonna. I insist that it's a great film. And I would like to remind everybody also that they should be voting on the sports movie draft, which was the show that we finished before this one. And the draft is up and available. And Dave and I both have film slates for you to vote for. Dave, do you want to promote your slate at all?
Sure. My slate was The Longest Yard, Field of Dreams, Major League, Remember the Titans, and Ford versus Ferrari.
A very fine slate of films. I did a comparison. Remember, one of the reasons that we're doing this show is because we lost the sports draft that we did in 2019. I'll say I lost it. I was trying to save space on the website that we had, and I deleted a bunch of material. Jay claims to still have them all on a hard drive somewhere, so hopefully I'll be able to reconstitute it at some point. But I think I have 4 out of the same 5 films that I picked in 2019 that I have in our current draft. That includes, of course, Warrior, Slapshot. It was only a week ago. Why should I remember it? And it's the same list that I had 8 years ago. Why should I remember it? uh, Bull Durham and something else. Oh, Breaking Away. And then I didn't get the Mean Machine because Dave picked it. So I substituted in Caddyshack. And so I think that's a superior list. Make sure you vote for that one. All right, everybody. I want to thank you, my guests, once again for showing up and doing this. And I'll tell you, we've got the movie, which is money, and the body, which is dead. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.
Ha 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 ha